Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update into modern audio standards. This particular story is called Humans, WTF, written by Mr. E. Monkey. Lieutenant Yamada, please have a seat. Make yourself comfortable, said Captain Erforta, with a wave of his tentacle, attempting to approximate a human gesture of welcome. I'm terribly sorry to have to discuss such a terrible situation with you, but as you are aware, I struggle to understand human cultures, and I want to be sure that this difficult matter is handled appropriately. Cateran law is quite clear on such matters, but as your species are not technically members of our alliance, what is your expression? Erforta paused for a moment, antennae wiggling back and forth in concentration. Oh, yes, I'm walking on a high-tension cable. Lieutenant Yamada's eyes sparkled, and the corner of her mouth turned up in a slight half-smile. Erforta had to admit that for such an unusual species, their odd appearance was not entirely unpleasant. Yamada had been assigned to his ship, the Wayward Sun, nearly 3 years ago. And while the Terran liaison officer did not fall under his command structure, and they had in fact become good friends, they still addressed each other by rank, out of mutual respect. In fact, it was due in part to Erforta's response that Yamada had recently been promoted to first lieutenant. Though to be fair, she'd earned it several times over, as far as Erforta was concerned. Hostile parties became much more friendly when they learned that the representative of the Terran Navy was on board. Unfortunately, it was because of Terrans that Erforta was in the current mess. The expression you're looking for is walking a tightrope, sir, smirked Yamada, but I am not sure I understand. Yes, I know there was a minor incident in the gallery yesterday. Minor? Erforta interjected, his chronometaphors in his skin turning various shades of green and purple in distress. We had one human passenger attempt to murder another who, when he challenged the first to combat, nearly maimed a representative of the Terran Navy. Erforta realized that he had begun pacing behind his desk and took a deep breath to try and calm down before continuing. Under Cateran law, both individuals should be put to death for their vile and violent crimes, yet I am certain that, under the circumstances, the Terran Union would want to punish the second individual for attacking one of their representatives. Erforta paused, puzzled, as Lieutenant Yamada tried and failed to stifle a giggle, which grew into a boisterous laugh. Lieutenant, did you suffer damage to your central nervous system when you were assaulted? I can see that your ocular tissue was damaged in the assault, but do you think the damage was deeper? Erforta rushed to his friend's side, genuinely concerned, but Lieutenant Yamada waved him away, still trying to stifle her laughter. After a moment, she was able to collect herself and spoke, Sir, let me assure you, you don't have a crisis at hand. This is really not a big deal. But, Hanako, my crew recovered the poison. The data logs recorded the entire situation. Sir, allow me to explain. The first young man, Anders, was playing a practical joke on his brother, Frederick. And when I was trying to separate them, Frederick swung a little wild and gave me this little shiner, she said, pointing at her right eye. The situation has been adequately resolved, and it really doesn't need to be addressed any further, and certainly not with capital punishment. If anything, I'd suggest making them clean the gallery until we make port on Carabella. That would be punishment enough, I think. Erforta slumped back in his chair, deeply confused. I will defer to your judgment on this. After all, I really do not want to cause any sort of diplomatic incident between our governments. He paused, reaching to smooth his particularly jittery antennae. I fail to see how attempting to poison another is practical, or funny, and I am amazed that attempted murder is treated so lightly amongst your species. I must have deeply misunderstood your culture. Hanako laughed again. I can explain. Well, sodium chloride is a known toxin to several species in the Cateran Alliance. It is actually essential to human biochemistry in small amounts, and is sometimes used to add flavor to our food. But certainly, even humans must be affected by large quantities of this chemical. The amount that Anders added to his brother's glass of milk was absolutely harmless to humans, but was enough to taste awful. It was just a harmless prank. Remind me sometime to tell you about some of the pranks my brother and I played on each other when we were kids their age. This is nothing really. Forta's skin flashed shades of green and purple again. Later, perhaps. I'm not certain I'm up to it right now. Your people can be truly frightening. You know that, right? End of story. Story number 2. Humanity, written by Siligo Sila. It's easy to forget that amongst the umbrid races, humans have the least distance from their evolutionary ancestors. They're charming and friendly, and get along with damn near everyone. But there are moments when we're reminded just how animal these newcomers still are. For me, that moment is when our ship crashed. Smoke clogged the air, pouring from combusting electronics. My ducts wheezed forcefully, trying to force the particulates out. Logically, I knew that it was a waste of effort. No one would be able to lift the section of the ship that had me pinned. But every species has some degree of survival instinct in them, and mine wouldn't let me stop. Thank the algorithms for that. A shape burst through the whirling smoke and flames, forcing them to curl around it, and snarling as the tongues of fire licked at its exposed flesh. A brief hope swelled within me before my rational mind called it. I cannot be saved, it said. Do not drag anyone down with me. What are you doing here? I called, recognizing our human Ash, whom we'd picked up not 2 calendars ago. You have to get out. Ash barked in a hoarser laugh than normal. Their smoke, I assumed, and said, And leave you behind? Not happening. I could see the human's eyes now, darting about, taking in the situation. The pupils widened as it saw where I was pinned, and for a moment I was horribly reminded that it came from a predator species. Logic thankfully overrode the accompanying worries. Still, it did not have enough strength in its frame to move the metal that had me pinned. Not under this gravity, not even with its Deathworld build. I tried again to warn Ash away as it approached, but a snarl was the reply I got as the human braced itself against the floor and pinned metal. I closed my ears in grief. We'd been warned, of course, how humans will imprint on crew members, treating them as they would family. It was part of what attracted us to the idea of hiring one, after all. What we hadn't accounted for was the bonding working both ways. And now I felt guilt for Ash's impending death. I did not hear as my ears were screwed shut, but rather felt the metal warping as it was bent off of me. Shock overtook me as my brain attempted to make sense of the event. Ash could not have the strength to do that, but somehow he did. Thank the algorithms. By the time I could process everything that had happened, fresh air was assaulted by ducks. Gratefully, I inhaled and stared up at the beautiful, grimacing beast that had saved me. Us, I quickly realized. Several other crew members, only somewhat singed, lay in a field around us. I could hear Ash's ducks working overtime to supply fresh air to its system, and my sight returned to it. The human's eyes were wide and staring at the burning wreckage, not in fear, I realized, but focus. A focus so intense that I shivered to even be on its periphery. But the guttural roar that burst from the duct of the human shook me even more. Ash began sprinting back into the burning ship. I lay there in silent horror, watching my companion defy every survival instinct it must have and charge back to save more of our crew members. And then I saw it happen again, and again, and again. 17 members were saved before the fire became too intense for even the Deathworlder. It collapsed to its knees at the burning entrance, making sounds I recognized as distress. Having recovered enough to move, I dragged myself forwards and wrapped myself around the human in a manner that I'd been told was comforting. It must have worked as the human gripped me tightly, uncomfortably so, as it wailed in grief for the lives that it could not save. I learned later, almost as an aside while giving my report, how it was that Ash was able to accomplish what I thought logically impossible. Evidently, under great stress, humans secrete a natural compound very similar to higher-end combat stims. This gives them increasing energy, further resistance to pain, and unbound use of their freakish strength. The last thought especially chilled me. It was haunting to know that every feat of power I'd seen until then was subconsciously limited by their brains to prevent their own body from tearing itself apart. Despite the tragedy, Ash thankfully chose to stay on, though I think it was uncomfortable with the newfound deference shown to it. There was nothing to be done about it. After all, to us, Ash was an angel. End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.